Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
Hi, Dave.
Hi, Francine.
So this week, Dave, we're talking about something that we talk about quite a lot, actually, in the city. And it's a story around the future of the UK's mega rich.
We are slightly obsessed with this story, but we're not alone. Our readers are really lapping up this coverage. It sort of kicked off really, didn't it, when we started speculating what would Labour do when they take power. All of the love bombing of the City of London by Rachel Reeves in the lead up to the July election. And then the worries, weren't they? Huge amounts of concern. What's actually going to be in the budget as we waited all those long months? Are they going to tax the rich more? Are they going to drive people away?
Yeah, and we had a lot of anecdotal evidence of people saying, well, I'm fed up, I want to leave, I want to go somewhere where maybe I loved it a little bit more as a non-dom. And then we got the facts, right? So the budget came end of October. Now we know how people will be penalized and how their estate will also be taxed.
I think it's fair to say it surprised on the upside in terms of the scale of the tax raising measures, the spending measures. It was a big moment, and perhaps a little bit more on the left, a bit more socialist, it's been described to me by a few people, than perhaps Rachel Reeves was presenting before October, or at least before July, at least. And all the things that were rumoured about non-doms, like, that's been scrapped, the non-dom regime. Inheritance tax.
That's a big one.
On wealth around the world. That's a big one as well. So, it's got real. So we need to find out now, are all those people who put their hands up and said, I'm out of here, if this happened, is it actually coming to pass?
So, Dave, on this week's In the City, a look at which global hotspots are trying to woo the UK's mega rich and what incentives they're offering and how well it's working.
Welcome to the City of London.
The City of London.
The next station is Bank. Please mind the gap between the train and the platform.
The financial heart of the country.
The City.
The City.
Welcome to In the City.
Stand clear of the doors, please.
I'm Francine Lacqua.
I'm David Merritt.
And with us, Dave, in the London studio, our reporter Ben Stupples, who covers the world of ultra-wealth from London for Bloomberg News. Ben, first of all, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you
You're
for
a
having me.
regular, because we like speaking to you, because you unearth some fun and quirky facts about the ultra-rich and where they're moving to. So who are, first of all, these non-doms?
These non-doms are typically ultra-high net worth individuals who come from overseas and they're living in the UK. Typically, they're living in London. And things are changing for them. I mean, I was sat there watching the budget, listening to what Rachel Reeves was saying, and I said to someone who's in the room with me, wow, she got the bazooka out. And that was just me completely just coming out of my subconscious, because I was expecting the non-doms were really pushing ahead of the budget to have a bit of leeway, maybe have some sort of acceptance of, okay, the regime's changing, but if we're here already, maybe don't change things for us. Actually, to sort of sum up what's a very complicated part of tax law in the UK, she scrapped the whole lot. And the key thing to know now is that the key number for a non-dom now is 10. If you've been here for 10 years, you're kind of in trouble. And we've brought in a regime that is now 4 years, which exempts you from foreign income and gains. That's sort of what we have now coming in April 2025. The current regime is 15 years. So you can see how the UK has massively receded and how attractive it is, which I think we might get onto later. There are other countries that offer different incentives.
So just to be clear, if people don't understand entirely what a non-dom is, what it used to mean is that you didn't have to pay tax on your overseas wealth, right? So you're an international wealthy person. You might have businesses in other countries generating all this money, and all of that would be untouched by the inland revenue here, and you could merrily live off your income here without having the tax man going after you. So that's coming to an end. But just starting it back a little bit as well, wasn't it going to be scrapped by the Tory government? So Jeremy Hunt already said. So what's different in terms of what Rachel Reeves said compared to what the Tories were already planning?
You're completely right to say that, David. Yes. So the Tories started saying, we're going to get rid of this, but we're going to keep in place the offshore protections, the protection of your overseas trusts. Now, that's a really big deal, because let's say, for example, David, you are a Indian or African sort of businessman coming to London, and you're like, okay, I've got all these businesses in my home country. why do I have to pay UK tax on that? And that's what Rachel Reeves has done. She's brought these assets overseas into the scope. Now, there is obviously exemptions, caveats and all that sort of stuff, but broadly, she's brought these assets into the scope of UK inheritance tax or types of on trusts, which could be... And
that was a surprise. So that was
deal.
at the bazooka that you were referring to. Like, wow. So she's really spreading the net wide here to kind of capture more tax revenue from... overseas.
Across the private wealth industry, it's been a collective intake of breath. I've been through the dozens of pages of documents going, surely there was something, but there really wasn't. And the people far more clever than I am have also backed that up. So this has been a big surprise, actually.
But Ben, I mean, the rich can move.
They can.
They're probably the most mobile bunch of citizens in the world because you can access visas, you can move countries. And so if the tax regime is so punishing, and actually, if inheritance tax, if all of your wealth outside the UK also gets taxed, people just get up and go.
Exactly. So what this has sparked is those who were already a little bit uncertain, there were some waiting maybe there's going to be something in the budget for me. But if there's something bad, I'm going to go. They've gone. And there were some folks, Bassem Haidar, I can name him. We've interviewed him for Bloomberg. He's a Conservative Party donor as recently as this year. He's gone to Greece already. So he saw the sort of writing on the wall out of the Tories and then thought, okay, this is only going to get worse under Labour. So I'm gone already. So there's that sort of camp of folks who've already sort of upped sticks. Some who waited for the budget who are going, you know what, this really hasn't worked out for me. And then I'd say there's a sort of another camp who are still going to go, but they're actually going, okay, when I hit, that's why I mentioned that 10-year number, I can maybe stay here for a few more years, but when that sort of Damocles of the UK inheritance tax is there, I'm going to go. So why might you do that? Because your children are at school, because they've got kids, your spouse loves living in London. So let's max out the amount of time that we can spend here, and then after that, we'll maybe go live somewhere else.
Okay, so let's try and, I'm curious to try to get inside. I'm not sure if this is possible. Inside Rachel Reeves' head or the Labour Party's thinking on this. How much money is this going to raise enough money? That her argument has been we had to take all these tough decisions because the finances of the country are in a mess and we're fixing the foundations and we're rebuilding Britain. Now, how much money is this forecast then to bring in compared to what might be lost if the African businessman decides to decamp and all of that tax revenue and all those jobs that he brought to this country disappear?
I'm going to say the thing that drives me crazy before the budget when I speak to private wealth advisors. The devil will be in the detail.
The devil is in the detail, indeed.
But what I would say is that the Office for Budget Responsibility said that the forecasts for this policy are highly uncertain. So there's already a bit of grey area.
No one knows.
No one... I think people would like to say they know. The UK is obviously hoping this is going to raise money. The sort of counter-argument here is that the non-dom lobby group that was recently formed in response to all the tumult going on in the UK this year of a non-dom policy, they actually advocated for a different idea of actually just basically making non-doms pay more. And I've spoken directly to non-doms who said, I would have paid 1 million, 2 million to be here. At the moment, the maximum that they pay is £60,000. Now, just think about that for a second. You can extrapolate that, on the back of an envelope. That would certainly raise some money. So I think the jury is out for now.
But they didn't do that because presumably, I'm just guessing here, there's a bet that Britain is such an appealing place to be. Their kids are at school. They like London because it's such a connected and livable mega city compared to other places in the world, that they're just going to suck it up.
I think it was a game of bluff. I think exactly as you sort of say, Rachel Reeves has gone, okay, if you're going to go on then. My understanding through my sources is that Labour felt that the Tories had done this work already. The train was in motion. And I think if you're Labour coming in,
you can't unwind
looking like you're unwinding
Was it a trap by Jeremy Hunt?
I wouldn't say it was a trap so much, but maybe, you could maybe argue, you make the case for it being though, but I don't.
Maybe she just went too far.
I think the train was in
when
motion.
does the inheritance tax actually kick in?
When does it kick in? Well, it depends if you've hit that sort of 10-year.
Oh, I see. It's after 10 years.
But the whole regime change will kick in from April next year. So this is what's happening now. If you're a non-dom and you were sort of umming and ahhing, you've now got this certainty. It may not be the certainty that you wanted, but you've got something to go on at least. Before it was sort of, trying to read the tea leaves.
I mean, I guess, Ben, everything depends on whether there's a more attractive place to go to, where you have better, taxes, where it's livable. You have, hopefully you'd want them to speak your language. Mm-hmm. Who are the cities that we should look at?
Well, last month there was a really glitzy event in the Carlton Tower, the Jumeirah Hotel, 5-star hotel, marble bathrooms, private balconies, everything if you're a member of the ultra-rich in London you could want for. But you were not hearing about London, you were hearing about Abu Dhabi. So that's one of the countries, one of the territories that is showcasing itself at the moment. They do events all across the world, I should say. But right now, I think the audience is maybe a bit more receptive than usual to sort of hearing these pitches. So another country is Cyprus has an event at the London Stock Exchange next month. That is openly saying non-doms come to Cyprus. In these places, you can get more advantageous tax regimes, zero tax, no inheritance tax, no capital gains. The flip side is, of course, the London lifestyle. That's what you've got to trade in.
That's the thing. You'd have to live there.
I mean,
Right.
Cyprus is. I mean, it's a lot of talk about Italy. With the regime that the new government put in place there.
Yeah.
Milan is a big buzzing city. I mean, it's a different prospect to move to Cyprus, surely.
Yeah, exactly. There are
Nothing wrong with Cyprus, but
it's
a different thing.
But I'd also argue Milan is quite provincial compared to London.
That's the argument
the
that comes
Italian
through.
can say that.
I can say that. I can say that. They'll take away my nationality, but worth it.
What's coming through is Milan is becoming very popular. The big thing about Milan is, so I would say the real battle for the top premium offering in Europe is Milan or Switzerland. And Switzerland has a thing called the Forfait Agreement. They don't need to pitch themselves. They are known in the market for being a great place. If you're ultra wealthy, you can go there. Privacy, high standard of living. But if you do effectively their equivalent of the non-dom regime, you can't really work. And now that's where Milan is waving its flag going, you can come here. If you're a private equity executive, you can come here, bring all your structures, bring all your money here, and you can keep working. So that's my understanding of how there's a little battle going on, I would say, at the top, the creme de la creme of Europe's offerings in terms of, other tax regimes. It's going as far-flung, though, as territories like Panama is even touting itself at the moment. And
again, that's a very different...
Well, that might be
Very
attractive. If you
different
think about who comes to London, you've got a lot of Latin Americans here, and you don't even have to... I don't think you even have to live there. Might be incorrect there, but I don't think you even have to live there to benefit from the regime.
After Brexit, of course, Paris has been starting itself as the financial capital certainly of the European Union. What about the French regime? Is that and Emmanuel Macron tried to roll out the red carpet after Brexit, didn't he? To Britain's rich.
And this is where actually France might have shot itself in the foot a little bit. Straight after the Tories came out with all those changes, a lot of folks said, folks are just going to go to Paris. But when you look at the political instability in the UK, France and Germany, it's made a lot of folks go, okay, where is stable and where is safe? Politically stable is the key thing. That's making a lot of folks think, well, maybe I go to the Middle East. And yes, you might end up having to deal with 50-degree temperatures. You've got to have your fan out with you all the time. But at least I know that this regime is going to be in place for as long as my kids are in school and I'm a shareholder.
You're
of this
running away
business,
from the
for example.
democracies of Northern Europe.
It's a really interesting point. It's a really interesting dynamic of how the ultra-wealthy population is shifting in response to the politics across the European continent.
Well, what's the knock-on effect for London for this shift? So say a few thousand of these people go, you're Greek shipping billionaire. It's all of the peripheral effects, isn't it? So it's that person and their wealth, but it's their property, it's the staff, it's the broader employment, the ecosystem that they bring with us. Isn't that going to have a noticeable impact, do you think, on London?
I think so. London's billionaire economy is a real thing. One non-dom I've spoken to, who I can't name, they don't want to be named in our coverage, they, without giving too many details away, are sponsoring one of a whole exhibition at a major London institution at the moment. And of course, if they weren't here, if they weren't living here, they told me, I just wouldn't do it because I live as a local bias to a lot of our activities. We have it, right? We shop at our local supermarkets. We don't go to Germany or whatever to do our local shopping. So you extrapolate that for someone who's worth 100 million or more, and you could see the sort of the ripple effects across. And schools are having to think about things, and I think the soft effects, the soft power of the non-dom ecosystem is gonna have a tangible impact. Again, we're going to have to wait to gather the full impact of what's going to happen here.
Does the extra 20% VAT increase on schools make a difference to the ultra rich?
They're not that price sensitive, but it's the messaging of it.
I hate to sound it sounds awful to say it, but they actually don't mind so much. What's been a big deal is Rishi Sunak's decision to stop you can't reclaim VAT anymore on luxury goods. So I know Middle East billionaires, for example, will now, instead of going to London, they will stay in London. They've got their place here, but they will go on a private jet to Milan and spend hundreds of thousands.
A false economy, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just to save on the tax.
Milan more than Paris?
Or maybe Paris as well. Milan or Paris, reclaim the VAT. And because if you're spending that amount of money and you can't do it in London, for them, it's cheaper to actually do the transport than to spend the money in London. That's a bit absurd. But again, I think there are a lot of tiny violins, as you say. I don't think there's a lot of sympathy for people who are in that. And
that is some of the messaging situation. We're hearing, isn't it, from the Labour government now? The same thing is being echoed on these farmer protests that we're seeing around putting inheritance tax on farms over £1 million. They're saying, so what? You know, these are the gripes of the rich aren't our concern, and we're not here to kind of attract the,
except it's money lost.
But this is the long term effect on the income that the government's going to have, and but it's going to take years, isn't it, to sort of see the effect of that?
I think it will take years, yes, because the UK, don't need to go into the details too much, but the UK tax data from the government comes out about at least a year later, like sort of typical tax receipts for other stuff. What I would say is the counter argument is, if you were an outsider looking at London, London has had a bloated millionaire ultra high net worth population for a long, long time. So what someone from the outside might be there going and saying is, it's just a natural correction in the market. You imagine London as effectively as a stock. It's just a correction, actually, to sort of maybe getting the UK back to its sort of underlying value, to sort of try to think of it in a stock term.
How many non-doms does the UK have? Are there any figures? I mean, there's no...
Almost 80,000.
80,000?
Yeah.
And we don't have an idea of how many of those will go.
We don't have an exact number, but there's been some research that's put out that the UK is already this year going to be the second highest loser in terms of net number of millionaires after China. Now, non-doms are going to be tied up in that group, and I've spoken to more than half a dozen who've said that they are going to be going within the next few years. So this is an active situation, and I've spoken to private wealth advisors who've gone almost half of my clients are going, and that's more than 100. And that if you extrapolate that could be quite a significant number, especially given previous academic research that said only 77 non-doms would go.
I'm struggling to think of another country that might actively try to drive the wealthy away from their shores. Is it at some point, if those numbers come to pass, might we see a pivot from the government on this, or some of these other measures, maybe some more devilish detail, as you mentioned, to kind of ameliorate some of these issues?
Well, the big thing, you might remember this. Do you remember in 2022, the UK scrapped its golden visa? Now, there's a massive open goal for the UK right now, and if those who are in the right spaces and are trying to create channels to number 10 are saying, hey, okay, you're doing this with non-doms, but by the way, you've got this golden visa, which doesn't exist right now. Other countries have that, and it's a really attractive way of getting ultra net worths in. So your guess is as good as mine right now, David, but there is an opportunity, yes, for the UK to try and have some wiggle room here.
Ben, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the In the City podcast. Now, if you never want to miss a story, become a Bloomberg.com subscriber today. Check out our special intro offer right now at Bloomberg.com/podcast offer, or just click on the link in the show notes. You'll also unlock deep reporting, data, and analysis from reporters around the world. This episode was hosted by me, Francine Lacqua, with David Merritt. It was produced by Summer Sadi. Production support from Moses Andam and sound design by Blake Maples. Brendan Francis Newman is our executive producer. Sage Bauman is head of podcasts. Special thanks to Ben Stupples. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts.